Ashwood Hollow was a place few dared to venture, nestled deep within the shadowy expanse of the Blackwood Forest. To the unknowing traveler, it appeared as nothing more than an old, forgotten village, overrun by nature's claim. But the villagers, those who lived in the hollow, knew better. They lived in silence, bound by a secret that clung to the very ground they walked on, an ancient curse, a pact with something far older than time itself. Elliot Harper had heard the stories. Of course, he had grown up on them. As a child, he'd listened to the elders whisper in hushed tones, warning of the hollow's dark history. But Elliot was a man now, and the curiosity that once burned inside him had long ago faded into a desire for proof of the strange. Twisted tales that had been passed down through generations. He had come to Ashwood Hollow, not as a visitor, but as a man seeking the truth behind the myths. The village itself was eerily quiet, the air thick with the scent of moss and damp earth. The houses, though weathered and decaying, stood in neat rows, as though they had been abandoned only moments ago. But there was no one in the streets, no sound. It was as if the village was frozen in time, waiting for someone to awaken it. Elliot wandered through the narrow, overgrown path leading to the heart of the village, his boots crunching on the dry leaves scattered on the ground. He passed by the old well that had long since run dry, its stone walls covered in thick vines. As he walked deeper into the hollow, the air grew colder, and an unnatural stillness settled over him, like the forest was holding its breath. At the center of the village stood an ancient, twisted tree, a gnarled behemoth that reached toward the sky with limbs like skeletal fingers. It was said that the tree was the heart of Ashwood Hollow, its roots burrowing deep into the earth, where they tangled with something ancient, something dark. Elliot felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he approached it, drawn by an invisible force. The village had been abandoned for years, or so the stories claimed. But as Elliot stood before the tree, he felt the undeniable presence of eyes watching him from the shadows. There was movement, subtle at first, but then unmistakable. Figures emerged from the edge of his vision, clothed in tattered garments that hung loosely from their gaunt frames. They were not alive, not in the way he understood life, yet they were not entirely dead either. The figures drifted toward him, their faces hidden beneath the hoods of their cloaks, their movements slow and deliberate. Elliot's heart raced as they circled him, but he couldn't bring himself to run. They seemed to be waiting for something he had yet to understand. One of them stepped forward, its hand reaching out to touch the trunk of the tree. When its fingers brushed against the bark, the ground beneath Elliot's feet trembled, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. The tree groaned, as though waking from a long slumber, and a strange energy surged through the village, like the pulse of a heart that had lain still for centuries. The figures began to speak in unison, their voices low and hollow, as though they were one mind, one soul. "The blood must be paid," they intoned. Elliot's mind reeled. Blood. The curse of Ashwood Hollow was not a simple tale. It was a pact forged long ago when the village had bargained with something that existed beneath the earth, something that craved a price for its power. The villagers had sold their souls to this ancient being in exchange for prosperity. But there had been a cost, a price of blood that would be paid every generation. And now, Elliot understood. He was the price. His ancestors had forgotten. The Hollow never did. The debt had come due. The figures began to close in on him, their hollow eyes glinting with hunger. Elliot stumbled backward, his mind racing for an escape. But the path was blocked. The village was closing in. The trees, the land itself, all seemed to be alive with an unholy thirst. The air grew thick with a cold mist as the figures reached for him. Their hands were pale, thin, and skeletal, but they had strength. Strength that could tear through the veil between life and death. As one of them touched his arm, he felt the chills seep into his very bones, his heartbeat slowing, his thoughts becoming hazy. A voice, ancient and deep, whispered in his ear, "You are the last of your bloodline. The price must be paid." In that moment, Elliot knew that there was no escape. Ashwood Hollow had claimed him, as it had claimed his ancestors before him. The curse was eternal, and he was its final sacrifice. As the figures closed in, the ground beneath him began to crack open, and the roots of the ancient tree rose like serpents, wrapping around his legs, pulling him toward the darkness below. The mist thickened, and Elliot felt himself being drawn into the depths of the earth, where the ancient power waited. The last thing he saw before he was swallowed by the darkness was the tree, its gnarled branches reaching down toward him, its hollow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. And then, the hollow fell silent once more.